All right. So, welcome to Covering College Costs for Youth in Foster Care. We are pleased to have Bethany Robinson from the Virginia Department of Social Services with us tonight to go over some of the ways in which college costs can be covered for youth who were in foster care. Bethany is with the Virginia Department of Social Services, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her role there before she gets started. For those of you who have questions during the webinar, if you'll type in your questions, we will try to get them answered immediately if it is something to clarify something that Bethany has said, or toward the end of the session, we'll answer the questions if it's not a clarification issue. So Bethany, I want to turn it over to you, and thank you very much for taking time out of your evening to be with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Kate, for inviting me. I just want to welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for making time tonight to learn a little bit about how to cover post-secondary costs for your youth who may be finishing high school and contemplating their next move. My name is Bethany Robinson, and I'm the program specialist for the Education and Training Voucher program here at the Virginia Department of Social Services. I've been in this position since mid-July, and I've loved it, and I'm really excited about being part of such an important resource for our older youth. I hope this information session will be helpful for many of you as you anticipate your child's post-secondary training or vocational or educational options and resources. And so for the format, I'll plan to spend the majority of the presentation talking about ETV, since it's such a wonderful resource for our youth who are attending post-secondary institutions. And it can also often cover costs typically not addressed through other funding sources. I'll also briefly cover other educational resources at the end and then open it up for any questions you may have. So to get started, I'll give you a brief overview of the program and how it operates in our state. So you may be familiar with the Chafee Foster Care Independence Program of 1999. The Chafee Act brought us lots of resources for assisting current youth and youth formerly in foster care achieve self-sufficiency. It also, in 2002, brought us the Education Training Voucher Program for youth aging out of foster care. Since the ETV program is a federal program, ETV funds can be accessed by students in every state. It's not strictly a Virginia program. In Virginia, the ETV program is overseen by the state, so VDSS, that's us. And that means we provide guidance, technical assistance, grant recipient monitoring, trainings, and materials, things like that. But the actual student application process, disbursement of funds to vendors and schools, and other administrative aspects are actually performed at the local agency level. So the program is a grant that does not need to be repaid. It can fund goods and services for post-secondary educational, higher educational, or vocational training programs. And it can provide a student with up to $5,000 per year for directly relatable post-secondary educational costs. So we can talk a little bit about specific costs ETV can cover, as well as cost of attendance a little later. One important thing that I just kind of scooted over that we should mention is that ETV funds can be combined with other federal aid or state grants. So for example, a student can receive a Pell Grant along with ETV funds. So who is eligible to access ETV funds? For our youth ages 16 to 21, they need to be currently in Virginia's foster care system or have aged out of foster care. Or it can apply for youth who were adopted from foster care after turning 16. The youth must be eligible for the independent living program in Virginia. However, and this is often misunderstood, the youth does not need to be participating in an IL program. Fostering Futures participants are welcome, but again, not required to be a participating member, just eligible. The youth must have received their high school diploma or equivalent, like a GED, or for our students with IEPs, this can look like an applied studies diploma, which was previously called a special diploma. And they need to start by applying for financial aid through the FAFSA, if that's applicable to their program. So we know many vocational and certificate training programs would not actually be eligible for federal aid, so the FAFSA requirement wouldn't apply to the youth entering these types of programs. And then the student would need to make satisfactory academic progress, and that can depend on the type of program that they're in, how that's defined. But for a typical or traditional school, that would look like a 2.0 on a 4.0 scale. And for our 16 to 21-year-olds, they need to make sure to access the program, initiate funds use before their 21st birthday. So we also open up the ETV for our youth who are a little bit older, for ages 21 to 23, and they need to meet the same eligibility requirements. However, to participate up until 23, they need to have accessed ETV prior to their 21st birthday. And they can be enrolled full-time or part-time. There's no minimum credit requirement for our students. So for our out-of-state students, since ETV is a federal program, any state can provide the voucher. Sometimes it's just a matter of sorting out which state actually has the responsibility. So generally for a youth in foster care, the state with placement and care responsibility is responsible for providing a voucher to an eligible youth. There are other circumstances in which a different state may cover the voucher, but it's dependent on other factors, like if the student specifically moved to a state for the purpose of attending school and some other reasons. I'm always available for youth, workers, or families to locate the correct state of voucher provision if there's ever any question. So what can ETV pay for? We can definitely cover the typically considered costs like tuition, fees, books, and supplies. We can also cover room and board costs. With this category, we always want to ensure that funds are distributed to students in a way that prioritizes tuition, supplies, books, and things like that that directly are relatable to their education. However, we can open up funding availability to cover room and board costs as well after that initial tier of expenses are covered, which is well within the federal guidelines and parameters. So room and board costs can include rent, utilities, grocery cards, and so forth to support the student. Not covered would be items like room furnishings, appliances like microwaves, dishwashers, household supplies like laundry detergent, and so on. We can cover the rental or purchase of required educational equipment, specifically if these are equipment pieces or supplies that would be required of all students in the class. And then we can cover some transportation costs. And these costs can look a lot different depending on the specific student. So for example, a student attending a school with a wide array of public transportation options may be able to receive bus passes or train tickets. But for the student living off campus in an area where there are little or no public transportation options, they could receive funding to possibly subsidize the purchase of a car or be provided with gas cards. We always just want to make sure that in whatever form the transportation support is provided, that it makes sense for the specific student situation and is required and necessary for the student to attend classes. So, for example, we wouldn't want to use ETV funds to provide gas cards or a car for the student who lives on campus. ETV can also pay for required training related to an educational or vocational program, and special studies and projects related to their classes or their major. And also for students who may be parents themselves, depending on if childcare can be included in the cost of attendance, then ETV can potentially cover childcare costs as well, specifically for class times where the student would need childcare. So other eligible expenses could include tutors for students who are struggling, insurance premiums or current term payments on student loans. And it's really important to note that if ETV is used for student loan purposes, it can't be used to repay past term balances. So only current term amounts and fees or insurance related to the current term loans are appropriate. And in reality, what we really see most ETV students use the funds for, as far as student loan purposes, is just by using ETV funds in lieu of accepting all or a portion of the loans they're eligible for. And we typically just see that at the beginning of each semester. So they would use the funds in lieu of their loans or to kind of subsidize their loans. So we can use it for student aid if all other sources of paying for disability aids have been exhausted or explored. And if you ever have any questions about additional ETV expenses that can be used, you're welcome to consult with your local worker or the Virginia Department of Social Services team, which is Lisa Moore-Jones, Renee Garnett, and myself, Bethany Robinson.
Hey, Bethany, you have a
Yeah.
little question here. Is
Oh,
there
okay.
a minimum course load to be eligible for the room and board?
There isn't, however, I believe some schools, if not most, would require full-time status to live on campus. So it really just depends on what's included in the specific school's cost of attendance. But there's, as far as ETV purposes, there's no minimum. So if the student is off campus taking 6 credits, then room and board can still be a cost that's covered by ETV.
And when you said that there was a up to $5,000, is that
Mm-hmm.
is that determined based upon how many kids apply for ETV, or is every youth eligible for up to $5,000?
So it is based on availability. At this point this year, as well as last year, we have had availability, so there hasn't been an issue of not being able to attain that 5,000. Theoretically, we could reduce that amount based on, a lot of applicants or something like that. But at this time, all of our students who have needed the maximum have been able to receive that.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So some ineligible ETV purchases could include what's listed here. Some are kind of random, but they're real. We've gotten real inquiries about these things, so they're worth mentioning. It's important also to note that some states don't actually provide Medicaid for their kids up until 26, like Virginia. So in some states, ETV would cover insurance costs, but not in Virginia since we have Medicaid till 26. So ETV is available for what are termed eligible schools. And per federal grant requirements, ETV can be used for specific types of institutions. It can cover costs at public or nonprofit institutions of higher education. And this would look like a typical or standard 2 or 4 year program. These programs would be encompassing community colleges, universities that award associate's and bachelor's degrees. ETV can be used to help cover costs involved in achieving higher degrees as well, like master's degrees, but the student would need to continue to meet eligibility requirements, and oftentimes the age of the student would limit the use of funds for these purposes, since the maximum cap would be the 23rd birthday. So when we're looking at the proprietary or for-profit institutions that are allowable under ETV, we really want to ensure that they're legitimate operations. So we want to make sure that these programs are preparing our students for gainful employment in a recognized field, and that they're accredited, and that they have been in existence for at least 2 years. So we can talk a little bit about the application process. You always start by just ensuring that a youth is eligible, and you can do this through your local worker, or you can call the state. I'm always available for help with any eligibility questions. So the eligible student would contact their current or most recently associated department or independent living coordinator and let them know that they were interested in ETV. We hope also that our workers will be kind of spreading the word about ETV and making that a known resource to our eligible youth as well. The student and worker would jointly complete the application and submit all supporting documentation. And I'll talk a little bit more about the required supporting documentation on the next slide. So as of now, our application process is a paper application that's submitted and processed at the local agency. And they typically do this within about 2 weeks of receiving the application. The youth is notified of funding up to $5,000 per year. And there are no current deadlines for student applications, so each locality would accept an ETV application at any point throughout the year. Students need to reapply annually and maintain, as we've discussed previously, satisfactory progress and/or a GPA of at least 2.0. So if there is a student who is struggling academically, our goal, of course, is to support that student and not be punitive, nor to remove the protective factors in their life like education and school attendance. So workers are to check in regularly with their ETV use, and if there are problems that become apparent, they're to put in place supports like tutoring or other services that can assist that youth in maintaining ETV as well as general financial aid eligibility. So oftentimes it can be appropriate to convene a transition team meeting with an agency worker, the student, and key partners in the student's life if the youth is struggling academically or personally. And the youth can use ETV, like we've talked about, until turning 23, as long as they've initiated the use of the program prior to their 21st birthday. So we'll just briefly go over the supporting documents. These are all documents that the student and worker will work together on gathering. The worker is ultimately responsible for making them available in their file. So the Casey Life Skills Assessment is one of the documents that would be required. Casey and Transition Plan are not required for youth who are adopted or who are over 21 or unassociated with a local agency. So the high school diploma or equivalent is another requirement that the student would need to provide. And grades, if the student is a returning student. So for our first-time students, grades would not be required since they would be coming straight from high school. The purpose of the grades is you really just want to make sure that they are enrolled and making good progress in their degree program. They would need to provide a letter of acceptance or this class schedule, really to show proof of enrollment, and a copy of their FAFSA if they did apply through the FAFSA website. The cost of attendance, which can be provided by the school's financial aid office, and their financial aid package or their award information. And these two latter elements are really what's going to allow us to figure out what amount of ETV funding the youth is eligible for. So as an overview, we first determine that your youth is eligible, and you can consult with your local agency worker or call us for clarification. You submit a paper application after the local worker has assisted in completing it, and the local agency then has 2 weeks to process the application. So if you notice that it's taking a little bit longer than you expect, definitely follow up with the local agency or the state if you have any discrepancy from this 2-week time period. Provide supporting documentation that we just recently reviewed, and reapply annually, and that goes for the FAFSA as well as the ETV application. Maintain your 2.0, and remember you can access until 23. So we want to ensure that the grades and cost of attendance and class schedules are provided to the local agency each semester, because that's really something that can prevent disbursement of funds if that's not provided. So here's some additional materials. So the local worker would have access to the ETV student application, but it's also able to be accessed online, and anyone's able to print that out and take a look at it. So I want to talk a little bit about some additional resources available out there for post-secondary options and funding sources. Filling out the FAFSA is really the first step, and it's important to know that our youth, if they were in foster care at any point after turning 13 or adopted after 13, can claim independent status. And this really opens up more funding options, including the possibility of receiving the maximum Pell Grant, which I believe is currently around $5,800. So for students claiming independent status, only their income and assets would be taken into account for award amounts, not the parents' income and assets. We'll talk a little bit about the Virginia Tuition Grant as well. This is available to certain foster care alumni or special needs adoption students attending Virginia community colleges. So the eligibility requirements are noted above. The newest edition, unfortunately, excludes some of our students from participating, and this is the requirement that the student now needs to display significant financial need. So for more, after you review the slide, for more information, you can contact the Virginia Community College Financial Aid Office. So VDSS does not administer this grant, but the financial aid offices would definitely be able to give you applications and more in-depth information on this.
And the issue I think that people need to be aware of for children who were adopted, that financial need is based upon the adoptive family financial need.
Exactly, right, exactly. So it's, we unfortunately don't have a lot of kids who this really applies to anymore. But for the select population that it does, it can be really helpful. It covers, all the tuition and fees at community colleges. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Great Expectations, but it's a fantastic support system for our foster care alumni who are attending Virginia community colleges. So it's important to immediately connect the youth at a community college with Great Expectations. And the program is currently, I believe, at 18 of the 25 community colleges throughout the state. And they provide just really amazing support systems to our specific youth. They provide tutoring, mentoring, great advocacy, help applying for college, help with even ETV applications and other financial aid applications. And I have included their website here for you guys to check out. Also, workforce credentials can be a really great option for youth who may want alternatives to traditional 2 or 4-year colleges or universities. So participating Virginia community colleges offer credentialing programs funded by this grant that are really targeted for the in-demand jobs found in each specific region of the state. The grant provides funding for many students to pay just a fraction of what the certification or credential may otherwise have cost. And I've included a link here as well to the program website for you to review a little more in depth. And here is a list of just a bunch of resources that are often helpful for our kids. So FastWeb is just a general scholarships website. Foster Care Alumni Association provides their own scholarship and also just provides a great resource for folks to check out. There is a Foster Care to Success scholarship that I believe opens mid-January and runs until March and can provide a really great resource. And then there's Horatio Alger, another scholarship source. They also have a scholarship that's geared specifically toward vocational programs, and that's found on their website if you dig a little deeper within that link. And then Project Life is a great partner of ours and can provide some great support to kids who are in their post-secondary programs, as well as providing just some really good information about how to plan for an appropriate match for post-secondary options for your youth, depending on their strengths. So I want to just open it up for questions at this point. You can ask ETV specific or just general educational resources, anything that would be helpful for you all.
So does anyone have any questions? You can type in your questions.
And also, if anyone would like an application or informational flyers on ETV or really anything, I've got flyers on the tuition grant. Feel free to email me or call me and I can send them over and share with the group.
Okay, looks like you have answered all of it.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you all so much for the opportunity, and please don't hesitate to call me or email me if you have any questions in the future.
I will let you folks know that Senator Favola has a bill going through the General Assembly right now on the Virginia tuition grant, which Bethany spoke of. And that bill would make it so that youth would be eligible to use the tuition grants for certification programs, not just college-based programs. So it wouldn't just have to be community college or university. They could go to a training program, and that has gotten support. So it looks like it's going to fly right through. Randy has asked, can you make the slides available? Yes, Randy, we're recording this, and under our website, you will find this whole video. available to you there, probably by tomorrow. Okay? Anybody else? All right. Well, thanks very much for your time tonight, Bethany. We appreciate you. And
My pleasure. It was such a great opportunity. Thank you.
and then you have a comment here that says, great information. Thank you, Bethany. Have you heard much about the WIOA funds for post-secondary youth with disabilities?
Yeah, I have literature on that I can send out. I don't have it in the slides at this point, but I can definitely send that out.
Okay, if you'll send that to me, then I can place
Sure.
that in our navigation portal on our website,
Sure.
and Kelly will be able to find it there. And Randy said thanks.
Great.
Okay. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thank you all. So nice to talk to you all.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
You as well. Bye.
Bye.